Lately I've been trying to act like an adult, which honestly feels like something nobody warned me about. People talk about growing up like it's a feature, but it feels more like a software update I never agreed to install. The worst part is, everyone expects you to know what you're doing just because you're tall now. That's it. That's the whole qualification. So the other day, I decided to finally take control of my life and do something adult. Not even a big thing, just something simple, like handling a small responsibility. You ever hype yourself up like, today is the day I transform my entire life, and your goal is something like buying a light bulb? That was me. I woke up feeling responsible, confident, powerful, like a man who pays taxes on time. I mean, not me, but like someone who does. So I walk out of my house with this dramatic adult energy, like I'm about to negotiate world peace. My neighbor stops me and says, "Where are you headed?" And I panic because adults are supposed to have answers. So I go, "Errands." I don't know what errands are, but adults say it all the time, so I'm just trying to fit in. Immediately he says, "Oh yeah, which ones?" And now I'm trapped because I didn't think I'd need a sequel. Adults always have sequels. Kids never do. A kid can just say, "Outside," and everybody accepts it. Adults need details, receipts, like we're all on trial. So I say, the important ones, and he nods like I just announced I'm running the country. And I'm thinking, wow, adulthood is just lying with confidence. Nobody knows what they're doing, we're all pretending. Anyway, I finally get to the store to buy the light bulb, my one mission, and immediately the universe reminds me that I am not built for this. Because there are exactly 1 million types of light bulbs. Soft white, warm white, daylight, dimmable. Dimmable, I didn't even know light could have this many personalities. I'm staring at this wall of light bulbs like it's a multiple choice exam I didn't study for. This employee walks over and says, "Can I help you?" Now look, this is a trap. Because if I say yes, I have to admit I'm an adult who doesn't understand light. But if I say no, then he thinks I know what I'm doing. So no. I'm good, I'm just letting the bulbs speak to me. He looks at me like I'm auditioning to be the manager of confusion. In true adult fashion, I make the worst possible decision, pick a bulb at random, and hope for the best. That's adulthood, just gambling with confidence. I get home, I open the package, and immediately realize it's the wrong one. So now I have to return it, which feels like the adult version of confessing a sin. You walk in holding the item like, "Forgive me, for I have chosen poorly." And the return guy asks, "What's wrong with it?" And I hate that question because nothing is wrong. Well, with the bulb, something is wrong with me. But I can't say that, so I'm like, yeah, it's too bright. Which is the worst excuse, because that's literally its job to be bright. It's like returning a fish and saying, "Yeah, it was too fishy." So now I'm standing there, trying to act like I know how light works, pretending this was all part of a bigger adult plan. And the guy looks at me like, "Sir, do you even know what bulb you needed?" And at this point, I'm actually considering lying again. But I know I can't keep track of these lies. Adults forget their lies instantly. If you lie as an adult, you need a whole staff just to help you remember what you said. I finally tell him, honestly, I don't think I was meant to make decisions. And he nods with this sympathy like he just diagnosed me with chronic adulthood failure. He tries explaining the difference between all the bulbs, but everything he says sounds like science fiction. He's like, This one has two 700 Kelvin. And I'm like, yeah, I usually keep mine around 98.6. I don't know what numbers he's giving me. I didn't know light came with temperature. I'm used to lights just being on. No settings, no options, no math. Now I'm standing in the store feeling like I'm taking an exam where every answer is wrong and somehow also expensive. He hits me with the worst question, what kind of fixture do you have? And I'm like, normal one. I don't know the terms. Mine holds light. That's its personality. I leave the store with a new bulb I'm still not confident about, but I tell myself, this is what adults do. We just buy things and hope. That's adulthood. Every decision feels like guessing on a test you can't retake. I get home, go to install it. That's when everything officially falls apart. Acting like an adult is one of those things everyone assumes you'll just magically understand the moment you turn a certain age, but deep down, nobody really knows what they're doing. That's the hook, because the moment you try to behave like a responsible, put together grown person, that's exactly when life decides to expose you. The whole idea of adulthood feels like you're playing a role in a movie where everyone else got the script except you. Walk around hoping nobody asks questions you can't answer, because the second someone expects you to have a plan, you realize how shockingly little you're working with. You just smile, nod, throw around words like errands or responsibilities, hoping they fill in the blanks for you. And people believe you, which is the funniest part, because all you did was act confident for 5 seconds. The pressure of pretending to be an adult turns even the simplest task into a performance. You step out of your house like you're heading to a high-level meeting. All you're actually doing is going to buy a light bulb. But the moment someone sees you and asks, hey, where are you going? Your brain malfunctions like you're being questioned by the FBI. Instead of admitting the truth, you panic and say something vague like, oh, just taking care of some things. What things? You don't know. They don't know. But somehow the sentence works. You realize adulthood is just about using the right amount of confidence to disguise the fact that you have no idea what's happening. That's the secret nobody tells you. It's all improvisation. What makes it even funnier is how quickly that confidence disappears the moment you're alone. You walk into a store thinking, am a grown adult capable of making one small decision. But as soon as you face a shelf with 27 different options of the same item, all that confidence evaporates. You're left standing there like a child who wandered into the wrong class. Pretend to examine things, hoping the product eventually chooses you. The last thing you want is for someone to come over and offer help. Adults hate that. Not because they don't need help, because they can't admit they're confused. That's the adult struggle, wanting to look smart while making decisions you barely understand. The humor comes from that internal battle from the moment you realize that pretending to understand something is way easier than actually understanding it. When someone approaches you with a simple question, do you need help? You immediately switch into defense mode. No, I'm good. Even though you're seconds away from having a meltdown, you don't want to seem lost, even though you absolutely are. That's the essence of the joke. Adulthood is just a longer, more expensive version. Childhood, higher expectations and more embarrassment. Everyone has had that moment when they try to act mature and responsible, only for reality to expose them in the most humiliating way possible. because pretending to be an adult might work for a moment. They're smart, but the truth always comes out the second you're faced with something as basic as a light bulb you don't understand. Adulthood isn't about having the answers, it's about hoping no one asks the questions. Small responsibilities have this strange power to feel massive the moment you decide to take them seriously. That's exactly where the comedy begins. It's never the big moments that expose you. It's the tiny, simple, everyday tasks that should take 2 minutes, but somehow turn into a full emotional journey. When you tell yourself, all right, I'm going to be productive, life immediately responds with, let's see how long that lasts. And that hook pulls people in because everyone knows the exact feeling of trying to do something easy and ending up in a situation that feels like you're solving a national crisis. This is where adulthood sneaks up behind you and reminds you that you're not nearly as prepared as you thought you were. You start your day with the confidence of a CEO, thinking you're about to conquer the world, and all you're actually doing is replacing a light bulb. But the moment you step into the role of a responsible adult, everything becomes complicated. Simple tasks suddenly demands knowledge, decision-making, and the courage to admit you don't know what you're doing. A light bulb shouldn't feel like diffusing a bomb, and they're smart, but when you're standing in front of a wall full of identical bulbs and labels you've never seen before, it absolutely does. You were expecting one choice, light bulb. Instead, you get warm white, soft white, daylight, dimmable. A halogen, it feels like they want you to choose your future, not your lighting. Then your brain instantly starts overthinking. You want to choose the right one, because this is your moment to prove you're capable of handling adult life. But that pressure is exactly what makes simple responsibilities feel huge. You tell yourself, this should be easy, which somehow makes it 10 times harder. You start imagining scenarios. What if you buy the wrong bulb? What if it doesn't fit? What if you burn your house down? Suddenly, you're sweating in the lighting aisle like you're taking your final exam, and every option feels like a trick question. Adults don't admit this, but half of our stress comes from acting like we're supposed to understand products no normal person understands. Nobody teaches you this stuff. You're just expected to magically know it the day you turn 18. That's where the real comedy comes in. The pressure of trying to complete a small task reveals how unprepared you truly are. The second an employee walks over and asks, "Do you need help?" you panic, because saying yes means admitting you can't complete a basic responsibility. But saying no means you're stuck pretending you understand how light works. So now you're stuck in this strange adult limbo where the only acceptable answer is a confident lie. You shrug and say, "I'm just looking," when in reality, you're hoping the answer falls from the sky and lands in your cart. The world expects you to be competent, but simple responsibilities expose your secret, that you're just improvising. Every adult is. Small tasks feel huge because adulthood is a balancing act between what you're expected to know and what you actually know. The gap between those two is where all the chaos lives. The smallest decisions suddenly hold the most weight. And once you say, "I'll handle it," the universe starts laughing because it knows exactly how quickly pretending to be responsible can turn into one of the biggest disasters of your week. Everyday situations have this unbelievable talent for turning into full-blown social traps the moment you try to behave like a functional adult. It's almost like the universe sets these little ambushes just to remind you that you're not as prepared as you thought. The funniest part is none of these situations are complicated. They're normal, harmless interactions, perfectly innocent, until someone talks to you. That's all it takes. One person saying one sentence, suddenly you're questioning your entire identity. This is the hook that keeps audiences leaning in, because everyone knows exactly what it feels like to be caught completely off guard by a routine conversation. You step outside your house with this fresh, confident energy, thinking, this is the day I act like a real adult. You're feeling responsible, calm, very put together, like you finally have control of your life. And right then, your neighbor appears out of nowhere and asks the simplest question in the world, where are you going? And this one moment turns your whole plan into a disaster. Because adults are supposed to have answers, real answers, grown-up answers. You can't just say outside, like a 6-year-old, you need a purpose, a destination, reason to exist outdoors. But your brain wasn't prepared for a pop quiz. You didn't study for this, so you panic, smile too much, and say the safest adult word you know, errands. It's the adult version of saying, I don't know. But it sounds responsible enough to pass, except he doesn't let it go. He hits you with the follow-up question you never saw coming. Oh yeah. Which ones? And suddenly, smart, you're caught in a full social trap. Now you're stuck building a lie on top of a lie because you committed too early. You can't back out now. You said, Errands, and now you're responsible for building an entire fictional mission to justify it. This moment captures the essence of adult life, trying to look like you know what you're doing while desperately hoping nobody asks for details. Details are dangerous. Details expose you. And the pressure gets worse the longer the conversation continues. Because adults ask questions that require context, commitment, smart, and confidence. 3 things you do not have when you're just trying to buy a light bulb. You want to say something simple. You also want to sound intelligent. You want to avoid lying. But you also don't want to admit the truth. Your big adult goal is something so tiny it barely counts as a task. So you mumble just the important ones, hoping he won't ask for a full PowerPoint presentation on your schedule. This is where the comedy hits hardest, when normal interactions feel like interrogations and you're trying to survive with dignity. You're standing there, nodding, smiling, pretending you have your life under control, when in reality, the only thing you're controlling is your urge to run away. And the moment you walk off, you replay the entire conversation in your mind and realize how ridiculous you sounded. That's adulthood, overthinking every tiny sentence you say, that everyone can relate. Everyone has had that exact moment where a basic conversation spiraled into confusion because you weren't prepared to act like an adult in public. The simplest interactions expose the truth. Adulthood is just constantly trying to avoid embarrassing yourself while hoping no one notices that you're making it all up as you go. Overthinking has this incredible ability to turn even the simplest task into a full dramatic event. And most of the time, the drama is entirely inside your own head. That's the funny part. Nothing is actually happening, but your brain behaves like you're facing a life or death situation. You walk into the store with one job, one mission, something so small it shouldn't even qualify as a task. And 2 minutes later, you're standing in the aisle, acting like you're making decisions for NASA. This is exactly where the humor lies. Because the more you try to take control, the more the situation slips right out from under you. That hook hits people instantly. The realization that you're not fighting the task, You're fighting your own brain. The moment you step in front of that wall of light bulbs, your mind goes into full meltdown mode. There are too many choices, too many labels, too many numbers, and each one feels like a secret code you haven't been trained to crack. You don't want to pick the wrong bulb because now you've convinced yourself that a mistake here will ruin your entire week. You start reading packaging like it's ancient scripture, trying to interpret phrases like soft white and daylight, as if your future happiness depends on choosing the right one. You tell yourself, calm down, it's just a light bulb, but your brain responds. If it's just a light bulb, why are there so many options? Why does it feel like a trap? That internal argument is where all the chaos begins. The real overthinking kicks in. The questions you never needed to ask. You start wondering things nobody cares about. What ambience do I want? Am I a warm, light kind of person? Do I want my kitchen to feel like a morning sunrise or a dentist's office? Suddenly you're thinking about your personality, your future, the meaning of your life, all because you need something that screws into a socket. The funniest part is, you know you're doing this to yourself, but you can't stop. Overthinking is a full-time job. Your brain is always on the clock, but the real panic begins when an employee starts walking toward you. Now your brain goes from confused to defensive. You don't want help, not because you don't need it, but because accepting help means admitting defeat in a battle you shouldn't even be fighting. So you pretend to examine the shelves with intense focus, hoping he'll believe you're some kind of lighting expert. When he finally asks, "Can I help you find something?" you instantly respond with, No, just looking," which is the biggest lie you'll tell all day. You're not looking. You're searching for answers to questions you didn't know existed. Because the moment the employee walks away, you start overthinking that too. Did I look confident when I said no? Did I look weird? Does he think I don't know what a light bulb is? And now you're not just thinking about the task, you're thinking about the performance. Everything becomes a layer of self-judgment stacked on top of unnecessary stress. Reality, all you needed to do was pick a bulb and go home, but your mind has turned it into an entire emotional voyage. The humor in this doesn't come from the light bulb at all. It comes from the way adults create problems where none exist. We turn simple decisions into complicated puzzles, not because they need to be, because our brains refuse to treat anything normally. Overthinking transforms tiny moments into epic struggles. By the time you finally choose something, you're mentally exhausted from a battle nobody else even noticed was happening. And the moment you get home, already know you bought the wrong one, and this whole cycle is about to start again. Admitting confusion is one of those things adults pretend they're too mature for. Deep down, it's the most honest thing any of us could do. The comedy in it is natural, because the moment you admit you don't understand something, the whole world suddenly makes sense again. But adults don't do that. We've convinced ourselves that we're supposed to know everything, every tool, every measurement, every household item. And the second someone asks a question we can't answer, instead of saying, "I don't know," we go into full defensive mode, like we're protecting national security secrets. That's the hook that pulls people in, the idea that pretending to be smart takes more energy than just admitting we're confused. When you're standing in a store, holding a bulb you don't understand, there's something strangely freeing about admitting just to yourself, I have absolutely no clue what I'm doing. But instead, adults keep playing this performance. Pick up the packaging, nod like a scientist, and squint at the numbers even though they mean nothing to you. Kelvin, lumens, wattage, these words go in one ear and leave your brain immediately. Still, you stand there pretending like you're reviewing blueprints for a nuclear reactor. And if someone walks by, you make sure to look extra focused so they think you're making a very important decision. That pressure to appear competent is exactly what makes the confusion 10 times funnier. Because the whole performance is for nobody. No one is watching, no one cares. Yet you're acting like the entire store is silently judging your intelligence. But the real comedy kicks in when someone actually tries to help. The employee comes over, smiling, ready to answer simple questions. Suddenly you're terrified because now you have to pretend you know even more. Instead of admitting, I don't know what any of this means, you smile and say something ridiculous like, yeah, I'm just comparing the brightness levels, even though brightness is the one thing you definitely don't understand. And the moment he starts explaining, you nod along like you're following every word, even though he might as well be reading the periodic table. They're smart. Adults have perfected the art of pretending to understand things while comprehending absolutely none of it. That's the moment where the hook tightens because pretending gets you in deeper trouble. The employee asks, what kind of fixture do you have? And now you're done. That's a question only a real adult could answer. Instead of being honest, you panic and say something vague like, the standard one. There is no standard one. Every fixture is different, but you say it with confidence because you want the conversation to end before he discovers just how lost you actually are. The funniest part is, he immediately knows you have no idea what you're talking about, but he politely plays along because every adult has been in this exact moment before. It's universal. The lie is obvious, but everyone pretends it's real because we all understand the struggle. The truth is, confusion is part of being human, but adults treat it like a flaw. We'd rather pretend we're experts than admit we're clueless about something simple. But the moment you do admit it, the weight disappears. You finally say, I don't think I was meant to make decisions. And suddenly everything becomes funnier, lighter, more human. The pressure stops, the expectations vanish, and the story becomes relatable to every person watching because they've lived that moment too. The moment when pretending collapses under reality, and confusion becomes the most honest thing you've said all day, pulling everyone deeper into the story as the disaster keeps unfolding. Trying to fix something yourself is one of those things that sounds so simple in theory, but always turns into a disaster in practice. That's exactly where the comedy lives. You walk into the situation thinking, I've got this, I am an adult. And at first, it feels like a small victory, like maybe adulthood is actually within your reach. You're holding the tool, you've read the instructions or skimmed them, and you're confident, they're smart. That's the hook. The audience knows what's coming because they've all been there. The moment when confidence meets reality and reality wins in spectacular fashion. The humor comes from this gap between expectation and outcome, the promise of competence versus the chaos that inevitably unfolds. They're smart. You start with something small, like installing a light bulb, which should be as simple as twisting one thing into another. But as soon as you reach for the fixture, that simplicity evaporates. Maybe the bulb doesn't fit the socket. Maybe it's too tight. Maybe it flickers the second you turn it on. and immediately panic sets in. Begin to question every decision you made leading up to this moment. Why did you choose this bulb? Why did you trust yourself with instructions you barely understood? Adults are supposed to handle these things without issue. Reality, most of us are just improvising. They're smart, hoping for the best and waiting for the inevitable mistake that proves we're not actually prepared. It gets worse because the more you try to fix it, the bigger the problem becomes. You twist the bulb, it breaks. You attempt a different angle, the fixture wobbles. Now, what should have taken 2 minutes is a full-blown crisis that feels like a 3-act play with you as the confused, panicked protagonist. The audience can't help but laugh because they recognize themselves in this scenario. Everyone has tried to fix something small only to make it worse. And that shared experience is what makes it relatable and funny. The hook is that disaster isn't just possible, it's inevitable, and the more you insist on doing it alone, the bigger it becomes. You also start creating these tiny excuses in your head as you go. Maybe it wasn't your fault. Maybe the bulb was defective. Maybe the fixture was designed by a sadistic engineer. You tell yourself stories to explain the chaos. Deep down, you know the truth. It's your attempt at responsibility that backfired. Adults try to control their environment. When the environment fights back, it exposes how little control they actually have. The tension between trying to be competent and failing spectacularly is what keeps the audience hooked, because it's pure human comedy. Then there's the physical comedy of it all, fumbling with tools, dropping parts, maybe even zapping yourself lightly with a stray current. It sounds small. They're smart, but it's the exact kind of ridiculous escalation that turns an ordinary story into something unforgettable. Every mistake leads to the next, and suddenly you're standing in a mess that looks far worse than when you started, all from the simplest intention to be responsible. The hook deepens because viewers can anticipate the disaster and want to see exactly how it unfolds, laughing along at each misstep, each hesitation, each overconfident decision that takes the situation further from fixed and closer to absolute chaos. That's the thing about trying to act like an adult, no matter how confident you feel walking out the door. Life has a way of reminding you that you're just making it up as you go. You think one small task will prove you've got it all together, and then suddenly you're standing in the middle of the store, holding a light bulb like it's a nuclear device, explaining to an employee why you apparently can't function in the modern world. When you finally get home, ready to show off your adult accomplishment, the whole thing backfires in the most spectacularly mundane way possible. The bulb doesn't fit, the fixture wobbles. Somehow you've created a problem that didn't exist 5 minutes ago. But that's adulthood, isn't it? It's all these tiny disasters stacked on top of each other, and somehow we laugh through them because the truth is, none of us really know what we're doing. We're all just trying to survive the simple stuff, pretend we understand, hope nobody notices the chaos we call responsibility. And the best part, somehow, even when everything falls apart, we keep going because acting like an adult isn't about getting it right. It's about showing up, fumbling through, laughing at how completely ridiculous it all is.